Okay, welcome to the February 2nd, 2023 Parking, Traffic, and Safety meeting. Before we get started, I do want to highlight that on February 15th, we will be having a Woodbury Avenue Traffic Calming Public Project meeting at the New Franklin School at 6:30 p.m. This is a regular parking, traffic, and safety meeting, so we will have public comment. We're going to limit it to 3 minutes for each person at the start. At the meeting on the 15th will be more of an open dialogue. So I just, if anybody's here just for that meeting, I want to make sure you know about the other upcoming meeting, because there'll be more of a back and forth and interaction on that specific project. And could we take the roll, please?
Mary Lou McElwain.
Here.
Steve Pesci.
Here.
Mark Siracusa.
Here.
Harold Whitehouse. Erica Wygonek.
Here.
Deputy Police Chief Mike Maloney.
Here.
Fire Chief Bill McQuillan.
Here.
Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Here.
City Manager Karen Connard.
Here.
Chairman Andrew Bagley.
Here. And could we see the financial report, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we accept the financial report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And you'll notice in the packet, I think, Eric, if you could advance one page, we do have, at a request at the last meeting, kind of a parking transportation, some of the services that are provided to the community through the revenues generated from the parking department. And that's also in the budget documents for the city, as well as the some of the other planning documents, but we just put it here for easy reference. With that, I'd like to start the public comment. We're going to limit it to 3 minutes each, and who would ever like to go first, just come up to the microphone and state your name and address and what you are talking about.
My name is Liza Hewitt, and I live at 726 Middle Road. I am here tonight to address the update and recommendations on the Middle Road Islington Street speed limit reduction. I strongly oppose the recommendation to raise this current speed limit on these two streets from 25 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour. I have appeared before you 11 times since July 2020, begging you for a speed limit reduction. And so I'm not going to go through the entire history of this effort to provide a safe neighborhood for pedestrians and cyclists in the area of Middle Road and Islington Street. I will simply remind you that Middle Road is made up of 138 residences between Peverly Hill and Middle Street. It is classified as a neighborhood connector street, and all the streets in Portsmouth with such classification have a speed limit set at 25 miles per hour, except Middle Road and Islington Street, if you raise the speed limit to 30 miles per hour. I would like to remind you that your own 2014 Portsmouth Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan adopted by the City Council states on page 17, quote, high traffic speeds make it uncomfortable to walk in portions of Portsmouth. Speed is a threat to pedestrian safety. High traffic speeds can cause stress for pedestrians walking along a street. Pedestrians have an 85% chance of death or serious injury when hit by a vehicle traveling at 40 miles per hour. As opposed to a 5% chance when hit by a vehicle traveling at 20 miles per hour, end quote. And from your own walk-friendly policy, adopted by the City Council, maintain reduced motor vehicle traffic speeds in residential areas. You have reduced the speed on Middle Road and Islington Street, now please maintain it. Data from your study shows an average speed reduction of 2 miles per hour along these roads and fewer cars going over 40 miles per hour. Perhaps to you, not significant, but for neighborhood streets that get upwards of 10,000 cars per day, it is significant. Research shows that cars going 2 miles per hour slower allows for an 20 extra feet of braking distance per car and 40 extra feet for a truck. And per your own 2014 bike ped plan, fewer cars going over 40 miles per hour significantly reduce the likelihood of death if hit. So my questions to you are, Have the roads been found to be more dangerous as a result of reducing the speed? Has anyone complained about the speed limit reduction? And I'd be interested in the audience to know, raise your hand please, if you would like to see the speed limit be raised to 30 miles per hour on Middle and Islington Streets. To me, keeping the speed at 25 miles per hour is a no-brainer. If DPW wants to continue to work towards physical measures to reduce the speed through the CIP, then that's great. But for now, you have enough information to vote tonight to send a request to the City Council for an ordinance change to reduce the speed limit permanently on Middle Road and Islington Street to 25 miles per hour. I have one closing paragraph I'd like to read. In closing, I've heard a lot of people in the city, including I believe you, Mr. Bagley, talk about making Portsmouth more like Amsterdam or Europe in its appearance and bike pedestrian safety. So I Googled Amsterdam speed limits out of curiosity, and this is what I found from the Dutch Review. Quote, in December 2023, the speed limits placed on 80% of the roads in Amsterdam will be reduced significantly from 50 to 30 kilometers per hour. Several major cities in the Netherlands have rallied against the high number of road fatalities caused each year, hoping it will become safer for cyclists and pedestrians. The new speed limit at 30 kilometers per hour equates to 18.5 miles per hour. So yes, by all means, let's become more like Amsterdam. Thank you.
Thank you, Liza.
My name is Roy Helsel, 777 Middle Road, Riverbrook Condominium. Every time when the police park in front of our condominium, the cars go the speed limit. As soon as they see them coming from the church up above. And when I pull out of there to get on Middle Road, by the time, and the car's up past by the church there, I can't even get out of my driveway, and that car is right on my bumper. Twice now, since they put this at 25 miles an hour, I've had people pass me over the double lines because I'm doing 25 miles an hour. The cops, they stay there, and nobody goes over the speed limit hardly. As soon as they leave and that light changes by the ball field, 2 times, I guess, they must know when the cops leave because they start doing 40 and 45 miles an hour down that road. And I tell everybody, push the button on the crosswalk. They just put that in there. And cars, they can't slow down fast enough to let those people cross. They have to go through, and I've seen many times that happen. So they use that as Route 33 highway. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Roy.
Good evening. Paul Mantle, 1490 Islington Street. I don't have any prepared remarks. It's nice to see the city as the technology when they want to use it. I asked this group, especially the chairman, to be consistent. When the city wanted to raise parking fees, Mr. Bagley didn't want them raised. They wanted them lowered. So they were. When the city staff wanted to raise outdoor dining fees, Mr. Bagley said no. We want them lowered. So I'm asking the chairman and this committee not to raise the speed limit on Islington Street, but to keep it where it is. Keep it at 25. Why raise it? You have a habit of going against city staff. I want you to be consistent. Not to mention that where the barrier is on WVVX Road, aligned with Islington Street, is specifically against the approvals done by the planning board and has been for 4 years. And nobody in the city staff or administration is concerned about it, that a developer in town went against his approved planning. So that's all I have to say.
Hey, may I ask, what was your last name, please?
What?
Your last name?
Mannell, M-A-N-N-L-E.
Thank you, Paul.
Good evening, everyone. Justin Richardson, 586 Woodbury Avenue. I'm here just to speak in support of the plans, and I know there is the meeting coming up on the 15th for safety improvements on Woodbury Avenue. Thank you for putting that forward. It's great to have a proposal to look at right now. I don't know, and I won't go into detail today. I'm not sure if it's the perfect plan, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. I wanted to bring one issue to your attention, and I gave two handouts there that show the area that I'm talking about. Right next to where I live, Edmond Avenue joins, and there's a bus stop there, and I've shown the location. There's no crosswalk there. Also, I live on the west side of Woodbury Avenue. The sidewalk ends right at that location, so anyone on the west side of Woodbury has to cross over, but there's no crosswalk. I know there's some parents at the Gem Estates that are very concerned about that issue. They don't want their kids to have to play the Woodbury Avenue roulette and try to cross in the morning. So I'm hoping that the folks can take a look at that and maybe revise this plan a little bit for the hearing that's on the 15th. And I look forward to seeing you all again then. And one question also to think about, I don't know whether the islands include the opportunity to put in landscaping. Some of the traffic islands in the area are really nice, and it would be great if there were a couple opportunities for that. I'd certainly volunteer to help with the design and maintain one if it were in front of my house. So thank you very much for doing this, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Justin.
Francesca Marconi Fernald. I reside at 1000 Maplewood Avenue. I also have a business at 177 Mechanic Street in the South End. I'm going to tangent off everyone else before me. I'm going to talk about the camper van issue. I saw the draft that was in the agenda. I like this draft. This draft is it's a really good start. Camper van lifestyle that I have seen, that's a lifestyle that these people have chosen. I'm not going to discuss, someone brought up the fact that maybe the camper van people are homeless or whatever. I did double check with Crossroads, and in 2022 they were never at capacity at any date. So I kind of did a little research on that. The camper vans I'm talking about are the ones that are, they're really nice ones, they're lovely. But I don't think that they should be on the residential streets in our neighborhoods. They do disrupt the flow of the neighborhood. I can speak for the South End. It disrupts. There's a lot of folks that do not have any off-street parking for their homes, and they're parking on the street. There are employees of all the businesses down there that come and go, and we've got a good flow. Tuesday's trash day. Don't park too close to the corner so Sully can pick up your garbage. You know, we try to be cognizant of what everyone's doing. We got boats launching. Hey, the boats are coming out. Everybody gets a text or an email. Okay, don't park. We'll put a cone out. Once the boat goes through, parking is good for everybody. Camper, it pushes the residential parkers out. It pushes the employees out, and it just disrupts the flow of it. And again, it's a lifestyle that these people have chosen, and that's fine. But it puts a strain on everyone, and it's personally, I've had people come on my property and get rid of their trash. Now, I'm not talking about the trash can in front of my restaurant. I'm talking about the trash out back where it says private property, no trespassing. They come on and they're putting their trash in my can. I get it, they're disposing of their trash, but I'm entitled to some privacy when it says private property. I'm also entitled to not have to deal with their dog poop, which gets in my recycling buckets. And I'm not talking about when I put my trash cans to the road. I'm talking about, again, coming on, posted out back. And my employees are not even in this area. I believe that the camper van draft is good. The only thing that I might make a recommendation about is to make sure that there's something in here that addresses a vehicle that is pulling one of those little, I think it's called a teardrop camper. That's the only thing that's missing from the draft. Otherwise, I like the draft, and it would allow the police to have some good teeth and be able to enforce them. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Francesca.
My name is Ann Cummings, and I live at 520 Sagamore Ave. And I'm here to ask again to please lower the speed limit on Sagamore Ave. The speeding has gotten out of control, and numerous times during the day it becomes like a speedway. Traffic heading out of town on Sagamore towards Rye can be quite dangerous, as numerous vehicles speed up as they approach the bend in the road where Little Harbor Road intersects Sagamore Ave. Too many times those vehicles heading out of town are speeding and they don't even notice the flashing lights at the crosswalk at the intersection and nearly hit people standing there waiting to cross. While those flashing lights on the signs at that crosswalk should cause people to slow down, far too many times they're going fast enough that many times they can't stop or barely have time to actually stop due to their speeds. Once they get through that intersection, they speed back up to get out of town. This also happens as traffic coming into town from the Rye direction. They speed up coming up the hill, and then even more so as they reach the top, close to the intersection where the entrance to Tide Watch is. Their speeds just don't slow down. And then they come to the crosswalk from that direction. Too many cars are going fast enough that they barely have time to stop for those already in the crosswalk. This crosswalk is heavily used by many people walking or riding their bikes down Little Harbor Road, some pushing baby strollers, some walking their dogs, and kids riding their bikes along that road. There are a number of children in this area, as well as a high number of walkers and bike riders who use the sidewalk as well as the bike lanes on Sagamore Ave, and not just in the warmer months. Drive down Sagamore Ave and you'll inevitably see this in all seasons. I've seen several times very recently where vehicles were heading out of town and they came around the bend where Sagamore Ave and Little Harbor Road intersect, traveling at high rates of speed, and have nearly run into the stopped school bus letting kids off in the afternoon at Sagamore Court. Imagine what that would be like if they should not be able to stop and they plow into that bus. As I wrote this, several trucks sped up the hill and continued on at the speeds to get into town through the crosswalk. One of those trucks sped right through the crosswalk while the lights were flashing and someone was in the crosswalk. Having a police officer come park on this road somewhere to monitor the traffic does not come close to conveying what those of us who live on Sagamore Ave deal with daily. You need to live here to experience this road. I bought my house on Sagamore Ave in the spring of 2003, and I can tell you it was a very different road back then. Traffic was quieter and the volume was nothing compared to today. It has become a main route in and out of town, and those of us who live on this town street deserve and need something to be done with regard to making this road safer for all of us. I'm asking you to please lower the speed limit to 25, as it is just about everywhere else in town, and then I'm asking you to please monitor and enforce the speed limit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann.
Good evening, Rick Beckstead, 1395 Islington Street. Speed seems to be somewhat of a topic. In the city, I think we've gotten used to that. A few years back, the state of New Hampshire actually gave us a blessing where we were able to go and finally enforce roads at 25 miles an hour. And it seemed to be something, I guess, that we were doing, Sagamore definitely being one of them, Middle and Islington Street. I can only speak more or less on behalf of living on Islington Street since the speed limit had went down to 25 miles. I had trick-or-treaters come to my house. I've been in my house for 20 years. It's never happened before. There's no crosswalk there or anything else, but family and children for the first time felt safe on that road, and we should continue that. I see people walking more and more every single day. We've got a ball field down the road. We've got a park down the road. Hopefully at some point we're going to have a skateboard park down the road. It's being utilized more, and that 25 miles an hour definitely makes it safer. I want to know what the difference is between my road and Pebbly Hill Road. Now, people will say that there are trucks and trailers and stuff. What do you think services on Islington Street down at 800 Plaza? What do you think brings the CVS trucks and material? What do you think brings Sherwin-Williams, Hannaford's? We have 3 gas stations. Those trucks roar up and down both day and night on Islington Street to go and fill the tanks that are underground for all 3 of those, servicing the city. Islington Street is a service road, no different than Middle. Middle is the exact same way. When they can't go down as far as Islington, they actually go down Middle, and then they turn on to the other section of Middle Road to be able to go and service our entire community. These throughways need to be safer at 25 miles an hour. A couple of months ago, I actually stopped Peter Rice, and I thanked him for including all of Islington Street for the study. And I told him how much we appreciated it, admired it, and how safer it was. In that conversation, I had a conversation when I was more involved in city government about actually potentially taking 30 miles an hour and turning them all into 25 mile an hour. There are 25-mile-an-hour communities that are out there. I hope that Portsmouth will one day be a 25-mile-an-hour community. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Good evening. Thank you for being here to listen to us. My name is Thomas Gross. I live on 295 Dennett Street, which is right on the corner of Thornton, right there at Hunter Hill. And I'm here tonight with a very specific request for you, a request for an opportunity, actually, because the problem at Dennett Street is not just a problem of speed. I mean, certainly I can tell this is a problem throughout the city. But the problem is one of speed and low visibility. And that's hard to gauge when all you do is you put up just a radar sign to determine what the average speed is. But what happens is right there at Hunter Hill, the road actually takes a 17-degree turn to the south. I measured it. And it's a hill, and so it drops down. Now, one day I was out there in front of my house, and a dog had run through somebody else's neighborhood. A dog got out and was coming across the street. Somebody came right over the hill, couldn't see him because it's not just a matter of speed, it's a matter of visibility. They came right over that hill and hit that dog. Now, I've been in combat, and I've held wounded soldiers before, and this dog was suffering. This dog was suffering and broke my heart, and it didn't die right away, and the owners came out, took him to the vet, and of course they had to put him down. There was another day when I was out in front of my house when a woman was getting a child, a baby, about a 7-month-old baby, out of her car, and a woman came along and took the door right off and almost hit her, and did not hit her. There was 2 other occasions when I wasn't there, when somebody backing out of the driveway just shy of the hill. Now, there's somebody coming over the top of that hill, didn't see him, didn't realize, right-hand turn, obviously worse at night, and definitely worse in the late afternoon when you're coming down Dennett Street and the sun is right in your eyes. So all I'm asking for, I know you did a site visit 2 days ago. I wasn't there, and my opportunity that I'm asking for is to show you, to convince you. All I'm asking is for that opportunity to let me know when you're coming out. I'm going to spread some cards around. Maybe give one to Mark. He and I were on the fire department over in Newcastle together. And what I want to do is ask you to come out, so let us walk you through and show you why we think this is not just a speed problem, but there's something else going on. Because it's my conviction that if we can all agree on what the problem is, the solution will appear itself. But we won't all agree on the problem until you get to hear from everybody who's really there. So please do me that favor. Schedule a time. I'm going to leave my contact information. All the neighbors want to talk to you. We didn't know about this visit the other morning. We really want to talk to you, and that's the only opportunity that we're asking for. Thank you very much. I'll pass some of these around.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. Okay. Archie? Peter?
Thank you.
Anybody else want one? Sure.
Thank you.
Mark, you get that one? Talk to you forever.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Good evening, Elizabeth Bratter, property owner, 159 McDonough Street, as well as 177 Bartlett Street. I spend a lot of time walking in Portsmouth. I personally think 25 miles across the board would be wonderful, because then they'll be doing 35. When you make it 30, they're doing 40, 45. I did want to talk about the phasing where you're going right on red, and you're crossing the street with an advanced white for the pedestrians. I feel that I know that I've seen all the little things. Thank you, Eric, for putting in all the videos and stuff. But the reality is that people are not very smart when they cross the road. So I don't know if there's a way where those phasing corners are that you can put the no right on red sign a little lower so that people actually see it. There's a lot of no right on red signs that come on. There's the one on Middle Street. It's way up high. I know it's there, but I don't think half the world knows it's there, because people go right on red even when it is red. So I don't know if that would be more helpful to have them lower. I don't know what the rules are on that. So if you're going to be phasing and allowing pedestrians to go first, we don't want the cars to go right on red and then say, oh, I shouldn't have been going. About the overnight camping, I'm very familiar with it. When I leave meetings at night, I walk through the park, and then I walk along Parrot Ave, and have often encountered people in trailers. I like the ordinance, but I would like to suggest that since we are a lot of these people come in Mercedes campers. They're very nice. They're like $200,000 campers parked out there. So I think it would be nice if we had some place for them to go. Maybe at Pease. Maybe we could encourage someone to open a campground out there. A lot of people think that one of the Safeway storage place is renting out their spaces behind them to people who are campers. It's not really a campsite. I don't think it's legal, but we do see people who are actually spending the night there. There's a difference between renting a spot to just leave your camper there and renting a spot and actually staying there. So I think it would be nice if we had some way to accommodate campers, maybe give them a list. There's a campsite, at the last meeting, somebody listed the online place where campers can find out where to park. I think it would be good to add for Portsmouth, go to these sites which are closest to us or whatever. So what was passed out to you was the original ordinance for residential parking, and the second page is the legality behind it. So at the meetings when residential parking comes up, there's always a lot of hoopla about what's allowed and what's not allowed. So I looked it up. I spent some time on the lovely internet and found this legal document that explains that cities can create residential parking, and they can do it pretty much any way they want, because you can also create other things as well. So that's just for you to read and possibly put on the agenda.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephen Stavis. I don't currently live in Portsmouth, but I am the business manager for Hearth Food Garden, which is the whole first floor of the new 60 Penhallow building. And I'm here requesting having some 15-minute mobile pickup spots around the building, either on Daniels or Penhallow. And I look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Good evening. My name is Robin Husledge. I live at 27 Rock Street, and I am here to speak about actually what Liz brought forth. We were part of the neighborhood parking program where, you know, we got our stickers and we had space to park on the streets, and it really helped with finding a parking spot when we get home from work on the streets that we live on. So that's run its course. They removed all of those signs. And then we noticed there were these new signs that came up that were resident parking signs on Hanover, and there had been some old signs that I'd noticed on like Pearl, but you know, nobody ever talked about it, and I thought, you know, those were, you know, old and didn't pertain. So then, you know, in looking and doing a little bit of research, find that I was really surprised to find there's actually an ordinance in the city for resident parking, and it's on Hanover from Bridge Street to Brewster, and it's also on Pearl and both sides of between Brewster and Bridge, and on Pearl Street on the easterly side. And so while we're waiting for some sort of solution for a resident parking program that can be rolled out, that, you know, for different neighborhoods, we have a problem since those neighborhood parking signs for, like, Rock Street doesn't have any of these new resident-only parking signs. So we are flooded with cars again. We have people circling, looking for the free parking. We're back to pretty much square one before we had the neighborhood parking program. So I'm here just to ask for you guys to maybe explore taking an existing ordinance and expanding it to the most heavily affected streets, from Bridge to Brewster, thereabouts. And there's some other streets in there, Pearl, and there's Hill, and what's the other little side street parallel to Hanover? Little spit of a... Anyway, just the most heavily affected areas, if you could consider expanding the signs for those areas, because it does make a difference when those signs are there. So until we can come up with a full-fledged neighborhood parking program or a resident parking program. I'd appreciate it. Oh, and I'm totally in favor of 25 mile per hour on Islington. I walk Islington all the time to catch the bus, and it's made a world of difference. I can actually safely cross from Rock Street to the other side where I pick up the bus, and before I really couldn't. You had to run across. So I really appreciate keeping that at 25. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Stephen Parsons, 160 Essex Ave. I live there with my wife and 2 young children. Essex Ave is the connector between Islington and Middle Road, and I'm totally in favor of keeping it at 25 or go to 20. I always hold my breath when I have my 5-year-old walking across the bridge on Middle. It's scary. It's scary having 2 kids in your hands walking across that bridge. And really like to keep it at 25.
Thank you, Stephen.
Petra Huda, 280 South Street. I have a couple questions. I noticed that this committee already accepted the financial statements, but I do have some questions related to that. One of the things I guess I'd like to call to your attention, since nobody asked any questions, would be the difference between the High Hanover garage and the Foundry garage. Now, as we all know, the High Hanover is being repaired, and it is only at 2/3 capacity. So when you look at the amount of revenue coming in, you would expect that that would be down. Actually, it's up. So my question is, how is this being measured and how is this being calculated? Also, I would like to call your attention still the factor that the Foundry Place transient, which should be up because of the Hanover being closed, is still below 50%, which is where we are in the year. And the transient and the Foundry Place passes, which were moved over about almost 2 years ago in anticipation of them closing the Hanover garage, are still only at 50%. So I guess my question would be, how are we looking at this? And it was also mentioned in the council that we were around 70% capacity. So I would really like to know, Councilor Bagley, how you got that number. The next thing I'd like to mention is I, as a resident, and I'm sure all the restaurateurs and merchants in the area would be interested on your answer to the Hart Food Garden for a designated parking space only. The last thing would be all of the documentation on the Woodbury Avenue stop sign situation. I know you're having another meeting, and I know that the residents have received from Mr. Eby a 71-page report to look at this on stop signs. So I'm very interested to see how this works with the parking and transportation, and also how how enforcement of all of this stuff that we're doing would fit into with the police department. One thing that caught my eye on the hard hat item that was in here was enforcing speed limits is much more effective than putting stop signs in or putting other stuff in. So I would like to know how the city is collaborating on this and how they're going to move forward on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra.
Good evening, Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. And, you know, I asked when I was a counselor to really have everyone look at 20 miles an hour throughout the whole city when we were talking about bike lanes and pedestrian walkways. And I was told that we couldn't do that because of the state laws. But I would encourage us to look at, it would be very simple for people that are visiting, for safety of our streets, and also for there will be no questions. I would really consider you all to think about 25 miles an hour for the whole city. You heard it from different streets tonight, But if we as a citizen know that everything's 25 miles an hour, then there shouldn't be any questions. I mean, sometimes it's really hard to figure out what speed is at what street because their signs are changing. Different streets have different expectations. You know, I'm fortunate because of natural occurrences. My street, people automatically have to go slow. They don't have a choice. So they're going about 5 miles an hour. And I'm very fortunate with that. But I just really encourage you to really think about the big picture. And maybe it's time to say, we're going to make every street in the city 25 miles an hour or less, and then we can move on. And I wonder if once we do that, would we really need to have some of these traffic calming things that we're going to have to spend tax dollar money on? Or just by making it that way, there'll be no questions. Everyone would know it would be done, and we can look at more things that Mr. Bagley has requested about vibrancy and walkability and bicycles. So I guess I would really hope that you would consider as a committee to make it all 25 miles an hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to speak? And, Kevin, do we have anybody on Zoom? Robert, sorry.
Oh, you were doing Zoom. I didn't mean to. Is this okay? Yeah, I'll wait.
Mr. Combs, can we just hold on just a moment and we'll call on you? We have one more speaker in the room. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Lenore Weiss-Bronson, 828 Woodbury Avenue. I have a lot of notes here, but I won't go into all of them. But I think I'm here because the most important point I'd like to make is that I've heard all of the arguments over the decades against stop signs. People don't stop. People don't like them. It increases emissions from the cars and so on and so forth. But we have them all over the city, and it's really baffling to think that we have over a mile of residential street and also an elementary school and motels and so forth on Woodbury Avenue without one stop, a whole mile, with 23 accesses and egresses, and then at least 50 driveways. And over the years, I've seen so many accidents and near accidents. When I hear people bring up we've had people hit someone in a wheelchair, dogs, cats, a lot of near misses. Stop sign at the corner of Farm and Woodbury has been taken out twice. The people who hit it so that it broke off and flew into my yard once, almost hitting me and my dog as we were there. I just so many examples vividly in my mind. And so it's very hard for me, for example, if I'm in City Hall and I go down Junkins, to have to stop 7 times, which I did the other day, and I purposely looked at who was coming from either side. And the only traffic I saw on that whole 7 four-way stop stretch between Junkins and Middle was on Miller, 3 cars. Literally, that was all I saw the whole time. And a lot of signage, a lot of the yellow signs for children. So we don't have that. We have bus stops, school bus stops on Woodbury with absolutely no signage. No crosswalk, no signage. The crosswalks that we do have are faded, or the one, for example, at Farm Lane is at the top of an incline, and as the gentleman from Dennett was talking about, when you have an incline or a hill and someone crests it, you can't expect them to see the stripes on the ground. And there was a woman who was hit in front of St. Catherine's Church and landed on her face. I don't know what actually happened to her in the end, but in the middle of that crossing. And I've gone over and over this at meetings. I have 2 messages in my phone, in my old voicemail, one from Brad Lown and one from Ken Smith from 5 years ago and 10 years ago on this committee, telling us that they've heard us, we're going to do something about this, and that has not occurred. So I'm just, please include stop signs, and also, just like on Maplewood, and just like the entry to the liquor store, a speed humps. Because if we have people swerving around nice islands, they're going to be swerving into pedestrians, maybe into bicyclists, up onto the sidewalk. I mean, we've had just such an array of accidents. I don't even, I know I'm going on and on, but
Thank you, Lenore, and we'll talk about this more.
Okay,
at
I'm
the-
sorry. We just
the
really
upcoming meeting, and we'll have a dialogue back
Thank
and
you.
forth. So it'll be.
Appreciate it.
I hope you can attend that one. I think we're Jason Combs. Go ahead, Jason, when you're ready. Oh.
Please confirm you can hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So my name is Merva. Our husband is Jason Combs. We're residents at 834 Middle Road since 2010. I'm here to speak to raising the speed limit of Middle Road back to 30. And before I begin, I just want to thank the committee for all the work done to date. But I also want to echo the comments that have come before me who have opposed raising the speed limit. As you noted, the data may not support it, but there has been a noticeable difference since lowering the speed limit to 25. I walk every single day. I walk down Middle Road, I walk across the street, I walk down Essex or Sheffield, and I know what it's like to cross that street. In my experience, there were only 2 experiences this past summer where cars had to jam on their brakes as I was crossing the crosswalk. In 2021, it was a common occurrence, at least weekly, that someone would jam on their brakes and you would hear the screeching as I was crossing the crosswalk, and I would fear that the car that was stopping would be hit. I was very scared, to be honest with you, to walk with my son in a carriage across the crosswalk because people just did not respect the crosswalk and did not respect the speed, even with the RFB in place. And my husband even witnessed a minor fender bender when a car stopped to let him cross, but the car behind him did not. The traffic during the day has also seemed to been slowed with the reduction of the speed limit, or at least it feels that way. My office, I have a home office, faces Middle Road. And like, sure, there's this one Jeep that mid-morning accelerates by our house every morning and drives me crazy. And a lot of commercial vehicles that have seemed to have forgotten that they've gotten off the highway. But in the grand scheme, it feels much safer to be out, to be walking, and to be in my front yard with my almost 3-year-old. There isn't enough bi-directional traffic to make pinch points effective. We saw this with the bollards. Instead, it felt like the bollards were created this game for motorists that were annoyed to hit them, and there was noise throughout the day and the evening. And the thought of taking away street parking in the name of road narrowing is not an acceptable alternative. We moved from State Street into this neighborhood to not have to deal with these types of situations. There's so much focus on the average and the 85th percentile, but what about the times of day the speed limit is in excess? What about traffic and the residents? I don't want to feel like I live in a big city, to be honest with you. I don't want to feel like I'm on a roller coaster when I'm driving home going over these crazy speed humps. I asked the committee to reconsider raising the speed limit back to 30. Let's focus on less drastic changes like making the speed limit indicator flash. Ours does not, and I've noticed that there's a big difference between ours and other cities that have that. Let's look at narrowing the corner radii coming off Peverly, or changing it to no turn on red, and creating gateway treatments for entering the neighborhood or at crosswalks. All of these things could help. If Woodstock, Vermont can do it, if Kennebunkport, Maine can do it, if Newport, Rhode Island can do it, if Amsterdam, the most populous city in the Netherlands, can do it, we can do it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there anybody else on Zoom that would like to speak? If so, raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing no further speakers, I'm going to close the public comment. Presentations, I don't believe we have any tonight on the agenda. And moving on to new business. A, Sagamore Avenue speed reduction measures request by resident. Sample motion moved to refer to staff for an evaluation and a report back.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead, Steve.
I would just ask Eric, when you're out there with the data, I think the comments about the Little Harbor Road point is a real important point. Now, could you make sure your data focuses on that point on the corridor? Thank you.
Yep, we'll include that area.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item B, Daniel Street, request for 15-minute space for Hearth Food Gardens by business owner. Sample motion, move to table request for further evaluation.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Mary Lou?
Yes, I just wanted to, at some point, we talked about looking at all the 15-minute spots in the downtown area. Oh, I'm talking to him, aren't I? The 15-minute spots in the downtown area. We approved 2 spots at Moe's across the street from the new Hearth restaurant, and they're well used. There aren't any 15-minute spots on Penn Hollow. There are a couple on State Street, and most of the parking areas in that parking spots in that direct area are to the kiosk. There are very few standalone meters. So I would like to look at the whole picture before we do another approval for a 15-minute spot.
Yes.
For Stephen's benefit, because he came here tonight, Eric, could you speak to the utilization of the 2 spots that remain on Daniel in the vicinity of this place?
Yes, as last summer when we were looking at Moe's requests on keeping the parking spaces, we monitored the 15-minute spaces out there, and we saw that they were being used primarily during midday as customers coming in to pick up sandwiches at Moe's. The rest of the day, they weren't used much at all. In fact, from the video observations, we saw a lot of vehicles pulling into the spaces, realizing it was a 15-minute space, and then pulling back out, because most people are looking for longer-term parking in this area. Other than midday when they're picking up sandwiches, the spaces aren't being utilized to their best effect. So
I think I'd just like to close on that thought by saying this is something we can certainly evaluate and monitor now that there'll be additional takeout type related business in the area.
I would be interested to know, can we move one of the 2 spots in front of Moe's to the other side of the road if that kind of balances the use a little bit?
things like that could be done, yes, but they're in the ordinances, so any change to them has to go through, this committee's approval and then ultimately City Council. And we are still looking at 15-minute spaces on State Street with the opening of Richardson's Market, because there's 2 there, and there's been a request to move those around as well.
How many 15-minute spaces are being requested for this?
It said some.
Some, yeah.
Is it up, Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of Stephen? When do you plan to open, or so we can start to monitor the area? Come on over to the microphone if you don't mind. Thanks.
That's a big question. Yeah, we are hoping end of March, early April, but we were supposed to open in November last year. So, but we're looking for realistically end of March, and again, we're open to many options. I didn't know if some spots could be, turn into regular parking after, the big rush of breakfast and lunchtime. The loading zone area could be some temporary parking between certain hours and then after 5 p.m. possibly, but we're willing to, look at any options, really. We're just trying to alleviate the congestion of, it's a big space, there's, a lot of seats, there's takeout windows on both Penn Hill and Daniels that we hope to use, not for opening, but, within a month or 2. And it would be great for people to just come up, grab their food and go, and we know that can be a struggle. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you. Any more discussion? I'll just add that, we've reviewed a number of 15-minute parking spaces throughout the city, and we typically don't see that they are the highest and best use of our parking inventory. So I think, we're going to do a study, we're going to evaluate everything, but we're going to follow the data, and I don't know if the data is going to support this or not. So we'll see what it has to say. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? On to, old business. Overnight camping on city streets and property, proposed draft ordinance to restrict. Sample motion, move to approve draft of ordinance changes and send to city council for first reading.
I'll second.
I think we need a maker first.
Good idea.
Motion to approve the draft of ordinance changes and send the city for first reading. The motion.
Do you want to second that?
I'll second that.
All right. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I know you and I had a discussion about it, but I'd like to just here on the record have it that, I think this, while I understand that this is a quality of life issue for some of the neighborhoods, this may also be a larger issue where we have an issue surrounding housing, and that some employees, utilize these types of vehicles and live in them because of the high cost of living in the area. I say that because I know that there's a city employee who works for me that utilizes one of these vehicles, and that having been said, I think it's certainly something that needs to be discussed.
Thank you, Chief. Erica?
Have we reached out to any social service agencies to see, I feel like there's some tension here between catering to van life, advantaged van life people moving into neighborhoods and biasing and making it hard for the unhoused to live their lives. And so I hope we could reach out to social service agencies to make sure that we're not causing other problems.
Any further discussion? I'm going to have some comments at the end.
Yes, I think we need to work on this some more before we draft anything to send to City Council. I think this is a larger discussion of where people who are in, there are converted school buses that I know people are living in, and they're there overnight. My concern is where human waste is going, where trash is going, and where these people can go if we tell them to get off the streets. I do see them all over, especially in the summer, and I would say since 2020, there's been an increase on Parrott Avenue and the municipal lots. I've seen up to 10 vans in that area, and they're not all converted school buses. And obviously, social media has worked on this issue for Portsmouth. So I just would like some more information about where we're intending for people to go. Where can they park their vans overnight if we make changes on the city streets and the city parking lots?
Mark?
Yeah, I made a motion. I can make a friendly motion to...
Go for it.
Change it. Send it to the city for reevaluation and for a study.
Does the second agree? Yeah. And I appreciate you amending the motion. That was going to be my suggestion. I've heard from quite a few people. This is a challenging issue with, let's say, multiple layers to it. I do think we need to come up with a solution to the problem, but I don't think we have a solution for the problem that the City Council would be able to support as it's written now. So I think the city might be able to investigate some other localities that have addressed this issue and see if they may have some feedback that we can incorporate into a motion that we could bring back. Is there any further discussion? Steve?
So the revised motion is to send it back to city staff? Is that, I'm kind of confused what the amendment to your motion is.
Motion to have the city study it.
Who in the city?
City staff.
City staff. City staff. What prompted of it? Go ahead, Peter, I'm sorry.
If I may, I'm not sure this is really something that the DPW staff is geared towards. This may be more appropriate to refer to the planning board or planning department or
legal.
I did speak with legal, and they would be the staff who suggested that they might be able to take a look at it and maybe make some suggestions.
It's a general amendment, Steve, Peter.
No, I just want to understand.
What prompted me to do this was what Chief said about one of his staff, living or utilizing that vehicle. It's not, the whole idea I got at the beginning was this is all about tourists, on a website or an app. But it's more than that, based on what he just said. So I think it needs further study by the city. What department it goes is up to the city manager or city councilor.
And I did speak with the legal department, and they thought that they might be able to reach out to some other communities and possibly come up with, a more robust solution for us.
That's a motion. Is there a second?
It's a nice,
Second.
simple language, but I feel like
Yeah.
it might be too simple for the kind of complex problem.
Yeah. I think that's a good summary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Excuse me. Old business, Woodbury Avenue traffic calming, introduction of proposed plan for section between Rockingham Avenue and Echo Avenue. Sample motion, move to continue discussion at next month's meeting. Obtain feedback and input at the public meeting with the neighborhood.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Erica?
Hi. Sorry. There's a number of places where we've got, I think the medians are great. I really like the design in general. There's some places where there's a median and then a crosswalk, like one driveway down, and I'm curious if it's possible to make those median pedestrian refuge medians and align the crosswalks with the medians. And then there's also a couple places where it looks like new crosswalks are being added, and I'd love to see bump outs at those crosswalks to kind of go in that same direction. But I think it looks great.
Yeah, those are the types of details that we can work out in the final design. On most of Woodbury, there's just a sidewalk on one side, so we'd have to probably construct some other sidewalks to make a crosswalk come through. But yeah, that is part of the advantage to median islands, is it does provide that opportunity for crossing as well.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. I'm in favor, sorry. I should have said aye and then opposed.
I'm not sure everyone voted.
Did everybody vote on?
Aye.
Okay.
Some of us did.
We don't have enough microphones, I think.
There's no opposed.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
Just a question for the team.
No, we were after.
What are the end points of the corridor that you're going to be presenting on the 15th, both ends? Could you just give the
Sure.
to and from?
That's in the diagrams in the packet. This
Yep.
is one end of it here, at Dennett Street intersection.
Yes.
This is the Dennett Street here, and there's a proposed median island at this location.
Love that.
Then working your way up to, this is going past 95. This is the Rockingham Ave intersection, would be a median island at this location.
Yep.
This would just be paint on this side of the intersection. Keep working your way up. This is the Edmund Ave intersection, would be a proposed median island there. Another one up closer to the church at St. Catherine's. And then another one here on the opposite side of Farm Lane. This is the crosswalk that may be able to be moved over to the island.
Or the island to the crosswalk.
Yes, possibly. Well, it's the intersection there, though. Just be able to make turning movements. And another one here farther up. The idea was to space these about 400 to 500 feet apart in order to get a consistent slowing of traffic out on the street. This is the intersection of Maplewood, where there's an existing median island. Just past Maplewood would be a couple more median islands, and this is the intersection of Echo Ave, and there wouldn't be anything proposed beyond that.
Okay.
There's a traffic signal beyond that.
Thank you. And I appreciate that we're looking at the whole corridor comprehensively. I think that's really helpful. So I look forward to being at the meeting on the 15th and having back and forth with the community on the design. Thank you.
All right, moving on. Item D, Dennett Street, request for traffic calming by resident. And this is the one we had the site visit on earlier. I think it was this week.
It was Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Excuse me. Site visit.
So, see if anybody wants to make a motion of sorts.
I think there's a motion to, I'm going to make a motion to have a pilot study program that we talked about. Peter, give a second. Kind of a vague motion. We talked about a pilot program.
I recall that discussion. I suggest, or I'd make a motion to have staff report back on what they suggest would be a potential traffic calming element in that area.
Second.
And then once that's done, we could then pilot it to see if it works.
Okay. Yeah, let's motion to study. I second Peter's motion.
Any further discussion? All right. Well, hopefully we'll come up with a good solution to slow the traffic. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Item D, Islington Street, Middle Road, speed limit trial, 6 months. Report back.
Good evening, PTS. I'm Tyler Reese, the Associate Engineer with Public Works, and I'm here to present the data that we have collected over the last 6 months for the speed limit trial. So some background. Eric, next slide, please. 2 speed limit reduction trials were approved by this committee on May 5th of last year. Islington Street from the Route 33 road to Spinney Road was reduced to 25 miles an hour from 30. Those signs were put up on June 20th of last year, and Middle Road was reduced from 30 to 25, and those signs were put up on May 26th of last year. Next slide, please. So why was there only a trial on half of Islington Street? Currently, New Hampshire state law only allows speed limits to be set to 25 with an engineering or traffic study, which commonly utilizes the 85th percentile speeds of vehicles traveling along an existing section of roadway. Islington Street from Spinney to Maplewood is more dense and more urban, and we have previously recorded speed data indicating the traffic flows are already at or below 25. As such, we had reason to lower the limit from 30 to 25. Islington Street from Greenland to Spinney did not have any of this data. We have recorded speeds higher than 30 miles an hour in these areas. As such, we initiated this trial to determine any impact of lowering the speed limits. So this is a map of the Islington Street corridor that we were studying. We had 2 of our stealth counters out, one near the entrance to the rail trail at 1474 Islington Street, and one near Barberry Lane at 1207 Islington Street. So like I said earlier, we used our stealth recorders so that we could get an actual speed reading of vehicles going along this corridor. We averaged the stealth recorder out there for about 6 to 7 days at a time, except for December, where some weather events, snow mostly, meant that we only had them out there for 1 or 2 days at a time to get fair and accurate data. So as you can see from this list of average speeds and 85th percentile speeds, in this section at 1474 Islington Street near the rail trail entrance, there has been a small variation in upper 85th percentile speeds. They've decreased by about a mile an hour since the speed limit was lowered in June. This slide is for the same location, 1474 Islington Street, and it shows the percent of vehicles that are exceeding the posted speed limit, as well as the percent exceeding 40 miles an hour, which we would consider high-level speeders. As you can see, obviously, when you reduce the speed limit by 5 miles an hour, the percentage of vehicles exceeding the speed limit increases. However, the interesting data to note is that the percent of vehicles exceeding 40 has decreased from 2.5 down to about 1 to 1.5%. This location, 1207 Islington Street near Barberry. As you can see, speeds after we lowered the speed limit have fluctuated slightly from 31 to 33, whereas they were 33 before the speed limit was lowered. 85th percentile speeds have also decreased by 1 to 3 miles an hour. As you can see here, the percent exceeding the limit began at 80%, 78%, while the speed limit was 30, and that obviously increased as we lowered the speed limit. The percent exceeding 40 went from around 4%, and it has decreased, but it has fluctuated. I mean, next slide, please. So on to Middle Road. We have 3 locations for our stealth recorders. We had 860 Middle Road near the church and Sweat Ave. We had 376 Middle Road near Spinney Road. And we had 127 Middle near Ward Place. Additionally, we had our 2 speed feedback signs, which continuously collect speed data of outgoing and ingoing traffic, and these are located near the Chase home. So at 860 Middle Road near Sweat Ave and the church, in May, when the speed limit was 30, we recorded speed averages of 33 and 85ths of 37. We saw a 2-mile-an-hour decrease in both the average and the 85th percentile when we lowered the speed limit. This is good. This is where the speeds on Middle Road are the highest. As you get cars coming off of Greenland Road, this is what we like to see. As you can see, the percent exceeding the limit mirrors Islington Street. When you lower the speed limit, the percent exceeding the limit increases. It's also worth noting that the percent exceeding 40 mile has gone from 3.6 down to an average of 1.7 about. At 376 Middle Road near Spinney, you can see that the speeds have decreased, 33 down to about 32 to 31, and the 85th percentile speeds have decreased by about a mile an hour. Lost here. As you can see here, the percent exceeding the limit began around 81%, and it has increased as we decrease the speed limit. And the percent exceeding 40 began at 3.1% and has decreased steadily, although obviously in October it went back up to 3.1%. December we did have, this radar was out for some slight weather event. It was a rainier day than we would like to get recorded data on, so that does help to explain some of the decrease in speeds in December. At 127 Middle Road near Ward, we got average speeds of 28 and 85ths of 32 before the speed limit was lowered, and this speed has stayed fairly consistent throughout this trial. This is the slower end of Middle Road. It is more densely urban packed and it's closer to the downtown area. As you can see, this is also the only spot on Middle Road where the percent exceeding the limit does not reach 90 miles an hour, or 90%, sorry. Yeah, we're not going that fast. But still, the percent exceeding the limit when we load the limit is in the 60 to 80% range. It is an anomaly here that the percent exceeding 40 did increase for a few months during this trial. These 0.1%, this is a very small amount of cars. I believe that the 0.3 in November was only 17 cars. So this really is just the fastest people on this section of road. So these are our speed feedback signs. This is the one that faces outbound traffic near the Chase home. You can see that red line right there on May 26th shows when we dropped from 30 miles an hour to 25 for the limit. The average speed from January to May 26th is 32.28, and the 85th percentile speed is 36.81. The average speeds for the rest of the year, once the speed limit had been lowered, were 32.14 and 36.79, which means that the average speeds decreased by 0.14 miles per hour, and 85th percentile speeds decreased by 0.02 miles an hour. Obviously, this data is slightly skewed, as you can see those dipped days right there, those outlier points, those are snow events where traffic tends to travel slower. If you remove these snow events from the data, you see decreases of less than a third of a mile an hour for both the 85th percentiles and the averages. This is the inbound lane near the Chase home. As you can see, it's the same sort of story, although it is a little bit better news here. We saw average speeds decrease from the pre-trial to the during trial of minus 0.65 miles per hour for the average, and minus 0.6 for the 85th percentile, which is higher than the outbound speeds, which is, again, this is good. This is the higher speed traffic that is coming off of Greenland Road, that we have been a little bit more successful in slowing down slightly. And again, if you remove those snow event outliers, you get decreases of around 0.8 miles an hour, a little bit less than 1 mile an hour. So, unfortunately, the data that we have collected has shown that this trial has had a limited effect on the average and 85th percentile speeds. On a positive note, we have seen some lowering of the percentage exceeding 40 miles an hour, which is our high-end speeders. The average of all of our locations over the percentage of vehicles going over 40 has dropped from a 2.7 average to a 1.6 average, which is certainly good news. However, the data does show, based on current industry standards for setting speed limits, that both these roads should be posted at 30 miles an hour. Physical measures will be needed for meaningful reductions in speed. With that, it is over to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Anybody on the committee would like to make a motion? We can make a motion, discuss it, and then modify it if need be, if anybody's reluctant.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we discuss this. Let's go.
Now we need a motion.
I think you got to pick one way or the other.
I think we're going to discuss increasing it to 30.
Returning.
Can we move that? Say it again.
I'll second for discussion purposes.
I'm sorry.
I said I would second for discussion purposes.
Yes, just for discussion purposes.
And does anybody want to take a first crack at this one? Go ahead, Mark.
Where'd this start? Didn't we have a committee within the committee? Okay, so that started with Steve and Erica. So based on your committee within the committee, Peter, what's your thoughts on where we're at?
We haven't discussed the results as a committee yet, so we don't have a committee stance. Subcommittee. I don't know what we are. Working group? I think we're a working group, but we haven't, this is the first we've seen these. It's not like we met as a sub-working group.
Question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Any ideas on physical measures needed? Any ideas that we can talk about for physical measures needed for meaningful reductions in speed? I'm just trying to open a dialogue.
Yeah, I think this is getting to a capital project such as reconstructing the roadway, constructing sidewalks or narrowing the roadway, curbing, something that would make the roadway feel narrower, or to break up the straight alignment of the roadway, put some, the median islands would be an example, but on this roadway we have so many driveways and intersections that it's hard to place them in a location where you couldn't be blocking someone's driveway.
So that's long term. How about short term?
Short term, we have tried, you've seen what we've done in the past. We have put those, the white delineators, the sticks out there to try to slow speeds, but have you seen in this results that they haven't had too much effect. I mean, they've just been an annoyance. People like to hit them, as we've heard at the public comment portion, that's causing noise. Trying to narrow the roadway, doing something like that, the problem is it's speed humps are not an appropriate measure. This is an arterial roadway, carries a lot of volume coming off the highway into town. It's a primary route where speed bumps are not effective or not appropriate. That's where a lateral shift in the roadway, something that would physically force people to get out of that straight line where they're not paying attention to where they are, break up that mindset of the driver.
Chief.
Mr. Chair, could I ask Eric what the harm would be in leaving the reduced speed limit in place?
Well, when we're seeing data that supports a speed limit of 30 or 35 miles an hour, it's another example of a sign just not getting much respect from the drivers. And when they see the signs, it's like the 20-mile-an-hour signs on South Street or many of the other 20-mile-an-hour signs. People don't obey them. It just breeds disrespect for the signs, and it causes. You do get the occasional drivers that will follow it, and then you have people, as we heard tonight, you have people passing on the double yellow because they're so frustrated sitting behind someone who's going 25 miles an hour on a road that's really not meant to go 25 miles an hour. It's, it develops road rage, and you have speed variance, and that's what leads to accidents. We're not seeing an accident history on this roadway due to speeding. So We're trying, as part of the subcommittee, we're looking at trying to make speed limits more reasonable and to meet expectations of the roadways. So this would be going against that effort to keep them at 25.
Thank you.
Steve?
I just want to step back a second. And first, I think the staff has done a great job of collecting a lot of data. You know, we did this to have a 6-month trial, which is what was required, and we have really good data to look at. Mark, to your point about the committee, as Erica said, we're seeing this for the first time tonight, but I want to stress what Eric just said. We're trying to look at the speed limit system comprehensively and have a system that's logical and that people will respect and follow, and that we don't have to depend on the police doing, focused enforcement to get people to behave on a given day when the police cars are sitting out there. We all would like a system that is rational and is equitable and logical and that has high rates of compliance. That's what we're all trying to get to. And I think all of us here want to have a system that's also safe for the most vulnerable users on the streetway, pedestrians, cyclists, kids. We're all on the same page there. But I think to me, when I see the data, it does speak to the idea of willful speed limits versus practical speed limits and seeing what the effect is. And I respect the idea of a blanket speed limit. And for transparent sakes, I work in Durham at the university, and the town and university have done that. Legally or not, I don't know. It's been in place several years. It seems to work. But there's a certain beauty and simplicity and logic to it. But I also, when I look at Islington, divided by the bypass, like inner and outer, to me those are fundamentally different streetscapes and feelings, and they are, in all practical terms, arterials. So it's not an easy call here. I don't think, I wish we could just set up some set of rules and wave a wand and everything would work, but it shows you that the data is confounding. I don't think any of those changes are statistically significant. So we changed the speed limit, but did we change behavior? Maybe we changed 1% or 2% of the highest speeders, which might be great, and maybe that's all you need because that's the most likely to cause an accident. So I respect that as well. But the data's a little confounding. I think in the bigger picture, Mark, to your point, we got to process this as we develop the bigger framework. But I do respect the idea of willful speed limits versus meaningful ones. And enforcement, has to be practical. We want correct behavior is what we want from the drivers.
Chair.
So thank you, Steve. Peter?
Mr. Chair, Mark brought up a good question. What is the subcommittee's, discussion on this, and, where they haven't had a chance to really look at it. I think, there's enough, it's aspirational at times to have a speed limit, but the subcommittee's looking at the overall speed limit of the city, and the people that, a number of folks said, let's look at a 25-mile-an-hour overall. That is something that the subcommittee has been looking at. And so what I would suggest is that we continue the pilot until the subcommittee reports back so that the speed limit can be taken in a larger context and have a real discussion in terms of, what is it that can materially change speed limits, and how do we go about setting speed limits and why they are such as they are on different roads. And this is really not the venue to do that tonight. I think it's a good opportunity for, I know the subcommittee's done a lot of work, and I believe are probably, I can't remember how close they are to bringing out a report back, but I think it'd be worth, having this discussion in that context.
Is that a friendly amendment to extend it?
Friendly amendment to the discussion would be to propose to continue the pilot effort until the subcommittee has had the opportunity to report back, and we can view this request or this recommendation from staff in the context of that report back.
Second.
It's a long-winded motion.
No, I think we get the gist.
Erica?
Yeah.
I want to clarify, I didn't volunteer for a subcommittee. I only volunteered for a working group.
Fooled it.
So
You can't hide now.
To do it.
Thank you.
It's a working group, and I'm not going to help unless it's a working
That's
group.
right. I'm sorry. You're right. It's not a subcommittee. It's a working group.
there's a capacity limit I have, and
You've reached it.
Yeah. I guess I had a couple thoughts, just initial thoughts on the data that we're looking at
Well,
tonight.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
First of all, there was a motion on the floor.
Yeah, we got it.
Got it?
First,
Sorry,
second.
second.
It was
Okay.
agreed to.
Thank you.
I guess I friendly amendmented to a working group instead of. I think it's really encouraging that the higher speeds are dampened. I think that's really, really good news because that's the speed, personally, I'm most concerned about, and that's where we're going to see the most impact if there is a crash. And personally, I think it would be, I want to see an environment where a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit is appropriate on that road. And I don't think I'm alone in that, but I don't want to speak for anyone else. I think as the working group, one of the ideas of this pilot was to try and come up with a road environment that would lead to the behavior that would allow for data that supports a 25-mile-an-hour road. So more than anything, I'm really disappointed that we're not seeing more slowing of the speeds. I'm thrilled to see the dampening of the higher speeds, but to me, this says we need to do more. And so I guess, and that, that's one of the bullet points here, and maybe that's the takeaway or the part what we would discuss in the working group. But I know it's a tricky problem. There are a lot of curb cuts. But we want speed limits that don't match driver behavior are unsafe. We don't want that. We want a safe, walkable environment on this road. That means we need to change the road so people will drive at the speed that we want them to drive. Changing the speed limit helped a little bit, but we need to take more significant measures.
Peter? Just to kind of reinforce what you're just saying, there is money in the CIP that is identified for traffic calming, specifically Middle Road is included in that. Eric and Tyler have done work to look at options relative to how to materially adjust the roadway. And I don't believe you're at a point where you can report back on the recommendations for that. But it is something that I think is not, it's not like never going to happen. It's something that we need to come up with a proposed solution, and monies are being requested to be able to implement these things. So I would, I guess I'm just reinforcing your point to that. Yes, it is important, and it is something that needs to be done to help create that environment so you can have a 25-mile-an-hour road.
City Manager. Mr. Chairman, can I put the working group on the spot? When do you think for the benefit of the public, when do you think we could have the presentation on the citywide speed limit study? Is March too soon? Does it make sense for our April meeting? Is it in that general time frame?
I think as soon as there's capacity at a PTS meeting for yet another topic, we're ready to talk.
I mean, whether this data tonight means that we need to edit a few things, I think we're ready. I think March is possible. It's up to the chairman whether we want to do that at a regular PTS agenda. I think that's the plan, but we're ready, I think.
Let's, I think this might be a good evening presentation.
And I think our next PTS meeting might be during school break week, so we may want to reschedule to the next week if we're going to take this topic on.
So perhaps April, then?
Well, either March at an evening meeting or April. I just want to set some expectations for folks looking for some closure on this. So it'll most likely be a special meeting in March or April, but we'll work to get that information out.
And I'll just make a couple further comments. So New Hampshire is a Dillon's rule state, which means as a municipality we're not allowed to really set rules or regulations unless Concord explicitly gives us permission to do so, which is unlike Massachusetts or Maine where they're the opposite, their home rule, and they can pretty much do whatever they want unless they've been told not to. So that does tie our hands. I will say I think as a community and as this committee and the council, the direction is to safer, slower speeds, whereas in the past it may have been more towards efficiency. The other thing that we struggle with is cars they're just better these days. They go faster. It's more comfortable to go faster. They accelerate much faster, from the cheapest models all the way up to, the expensive ones. So the speeding issue has become more of a problem as time's gone on from where it was, say, 20 years ago when cars just didn't go as fast or feel as safe going fast. Compounding that with all the extra distractions we have this day, it's created a real challenge and headache. I think we're seeing that just changing the speed limit doesn't really have a big effect, but there is a psychological message that it sets. We want people to go slow, and why they may not go as slow as we like, the more we can encourage them to go slow, the better. I do worry. We did have a gentleman speak tonight about drivers getting frustrated and passing on the double yellow line. I don't know what the solution to that is, but I'd much rather see us working towards making the speeds go down and the traffic calmer than the opposite. So with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I just wanted to clarify what we're voting on. Peter's amendment?
Extending the pilot until we've had an opportunity to discuss it in the context of the overall working group's presentation.
Good, okay.
Okay. E, Maplewood Avenue pedestrian signal phasing at Congress, Hanover, and Deer Street. Status update. Sample motion, move to place item on file. I believe, is there a presentation?
No, but there's a lot of material in the packet I could go through, and there's a couple of videos I could play if you would like.
I'll move the motion to place on file for the purpose of discussion.
I'll second that.
Mary Lou, would you like to see
Well, yes. I have seen the videos from 2022. I have read all the reports, and I know about the statistics, and I know about the, changes. I am speaking from a personal and also for other people who have talked to me about this intersection, specifically the Congress and Maplewood. And I do not think there should be green lights on crosswalk at the same time that the crosswalk pedestrian icon is on. So I object to the manner in which we have set up these three intersections. I don't expect any changes from the data, from the information that I've received and have read about, but I don't think it's a safe way for pedestrians to be crossing three busy intersections.
Any further discussion? I know we've discussed this one a lot. This is a very difficult one because it feels less safe in the current configuration than it did before when it was something known as a barn stance configuration. However, we've done a lot of study on this particular intersection. We've done studies before we made the change, and it shows that it is a safer way to set up an intersection. And it's hard to go against the data on this because what we're talking about is people's lives here, and the likelihood of dying by getting hit in a crosswalk with this type of intersection is substantially less. So I know it doesn't feel as safe as it used to, but that's what the research and the data is showing us. So I would, if there was a friendly amendment, I know there's been some requests about maybe adjusting the signage or potentially making the crosswalk flashers closer somehow, maybe a secondary one, so that when there is a light that people see the crosswalk is still flashing and that's not a solid red hand. I don't know if there's anything we can do along those lines.
Mr. Chairman, we'll have staff take a look and see if there's an adjustment that can be made to the signage or the flashing light. Yeah, we don't need a motion for that.
Okay.
I just think that any way that you can make these intersections safer, I don't think we should go back to the diagonal crosswalks for sure, but I feel that drivers are looking at the green light and not at the pedestrian icon. And so when they come up to that point, they're eager to get out of town. They're eager to either turn right on Islington or turn right on Maplewood. Those seem to be the biggest issues for me and for others who have talked to me about this, the three intersections, Congress and Islington Street. And people including myself, are feeling that the drivers are looking at the green light. They're not looking at the pedestrians.
Erica?
Don't we have flashing yellow right turn arrows?
On the Islington approach, yes.
Well, Islington turning right onto Maplewood.
Yes.
Yes, or Miller.
Middle.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
For folks that are watching at home or able to watch this meeting afterward, there's a great deal of helpful information that Eric has put in the packet, from a video to where other people have used this, and essentially rules of the road type information. So
Right.
we would want people to know that there's a method to the madness and there's science that we're following here. So just want to point that out. These packets can be full of helpful information. Thank you.
All right, I think we have a motion to place on file. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Deputy Chief.
Informational items from the Deputy Chief of Police.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Closing out the year in 2022, in the month of December, we had a total of 76 property damage accidents. 43 of those 76 were considered reportable, which is damage in excess of $1,000. We had one accident involving a bicyclist and one accident involving a pedestrian. As I mentioned in last month's meeting, each time we have a crash involving a pedestrian or a bicyclist, I look at the contributing factors to that accident to see if there are anything with respect to roadway designs or improvements that could be made that was a contributing factor to that accident. In neither of these cases did I see that as the case, and unfortunately, more often than not, what we do see is that either the pedestrian or the bicyclist is at fault. So that's just worth putting out that each time I do these reports, I do look at the causation of the crash and why. On a positive note, I also made somewhat of a plea last month against impaired driving. We have seen somewhat of a decrease in the last month. As of the end of 2022, we had a significant spike of crashes involving alcohol and injury crashes with alcohol related in them. And we have seen a little bit of a tick down in the last month. So anytime I get a minute to say that to the public, to talk about impaired driving and making efforts to prevent it, I'll take it. So sorry for going off script, but
Always happy to hear that message. Well, not happy to hear that message, but happy to get that message out there and reinforced. The item B, Bartlett Street at Thornton Street mini roundabout design.
Yes, in the packet, there's a plan here of the design, what the trial roundabout will look like. We'll be constructing the middle roundabout with some rubber curbing and filling it in with asphalt. There'll be some yellow plastic curbing for the splitter islands approaching each intersection leg. The crosswalks would be moved back. We originally had hoped to keep the crosswalks at the intersection, but you know, the most recent guidance on providing these mini roundabouts is to bring the crosswalks back so that there's room for a car to wait between the crosswalk and the circle, and pedestrians can cross at a safer location. So this, and we'll have advanced signing, which is shown here on each approach. All 4 approaches will get this yield condition, and we are in the process of purchasing the materials to implement this on a trial basis. And also, this is what the circle in the middle would look like. This will be mountable by larger vehicles, but any passenger cars would drive around it. And we've also designed this circle so that where are you? The coast buses and Wildcat buses will be able to maneuver around the circle without having to drive over the bumps every time. So, but larger vehicles trying to turn left will have to drive over the middle of the circle. And that's the yellow plastic islands that will be used for the splitter islands.
Thank you, Eric, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about this project. C, Sagamore Avenue bike lane status update.
Yes, I just want to bring up to date with that section of Sagamore Ave in the area of the Lester King at the top of the hill coming up from the bridge. We've had some property surveys done, right-of-way survey of the roadway. We found that we do have a little bit of right-of-way where we can widen the sidewalk on one side of the road but another foot, and then we can do a little bit of paving on the other side, and along with some restriping of the roadway, we can get a 4-foot bike lane on each side of the roadway there. So we can improve the safety without having to take any stone walls or fences or trees from the abutters, so we can do a little bit of work there to make it a safer condition, and we're in the process of designing that right now.
Great, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. And I just realized I stole Ben Fletcher's thunder earlier, but I think he's going to come and talk about parking revenues for this next slide. And
Deer in headlights.
Well,
way back at the beginning.
Or maybe Eric will discuss
Way back
them.
at the beginning, yep.
But I do just want to highlight, and this might be something we could include in the next packet. These are revenue. Eric, will you go down one or back to the parking? These are revenue numbers and percentage of the budget numbers, not occupancy numbers. So maybe at next month's meeting we could have the occupancy levels of the garage and maybe from a previous couple of years just to see if it's trending up or down or what have you. And then back to the, sorry. Do you want to speak to this one?
Sure. So this is a slide that we commonly put in our presentations that just basically discusses the concept of a parking benefit district, which is defined as an area that is that reaps benefit from parking revenues. The entire city is basically a parking benefit district as it is because the revenues generated by parking, and you can read along with me here, $2.4 million offset to the general fund, which obviously is going to lower the tax burden, transportation planning and engineering support, downtown snow removal support, waste removal, trash pickup, school bus and senior transportation, coast, of course, downtown trolley, police detail and crossing guards, among other things, that helps us lower the median tax burden per household by roughly $318 per household this past year. So it's important that folks understand that the revenues that are generated through the parking system are used to help improve the town.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of Ben? Ben, can you speak to the large non-resident contribution to parking, and can you speak to your efforts to make the residents aware of the parking discounts for residents?
Certainly. So the Park Mobile app is now nearly 50% of our traffic. So it's a good figure to look at when you see the resident mix. It's about 3.85% for the year. So that means more than 95% of our traffic downtown is generated from Boston or other visitor traffic. So that does put us in a good position to offer discounts and resident rates that aren't going to have a giant effect on the bottom line because most of that traffic doesn't come from that pool of folks. So we did a voting drive, as everybody knows, this last election, where right here at Ward 3 and at each of the other wards we had a table. Eric was part of this. And let folks know that if they use the parking app and come down and show residency status, which does require some paperwork, part of that's New Hampshire law. It's not just a matter of making folks come see us. But we're not allowed to record pictures of driver's license, things like that. So the only thing we're allowed to do is a test when somebody comes in and shows us the documentation. That's why it requires a personal visit for somebody to come in and show residency. And then their plate can be put on a special list, and when they use the app, they don't have the 35-cent per transaction fee, and they also have at this point, a 50-cent per hour reduction in the parking charge. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I would encourage anybody watching at home to go down to the Foundry Garage and sign up for this. It's every time you park, you're going to save 85 cents. And the thing that's really handy is if you're parked getting coffee with somebody and your phone will buzz and let you know that you've stayed too long, you can renew for, say, 15 minutes, and you don't have to pay the 35-cent transaction fee.
And you can do that over and over again.
It's a great product, yeah.
Mark, did you have a question?
Does the city still have free parking on Sundays at Foundry?
No, we don't.
No? Is that seasonal, or is that?
No, it's just something that is...
Just went away?
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
All right, miscellaneous. Suggestions for a new name of committee to incorporate all modes of transportation. This is something we talked about I think at the end of last year, that perhaps the name of our committee doesn't directly reflect our focus. I don't know if anybody's come up with any better names in the meantime.
Subcommittee.
Mr.
Anybody want
Chairman,
to sign up?
if I heard correctly, weren't we last talking about parking and transportation safety committee meeting? Just changing traffic
Something
to
like that.
transportation? That's the last one I heard.
Erica?
There are lots of places that just have transportation advisory committees or councils, and I feel like that's pretty all-encompassing. That's more mode neutral than what we have now. I don't know if it's right, but it's just another idea to throw out there.
Maybe I'll make a suggestion that somebody email us a name to bring forward on the next agenda, and then everybody will be able to see what we're thinking of calling ourselves, and we can take a vote if we want to change the name. But I think the focus is we want to make sure that everybody knows that this is multimodal and that safety is a priority. And sometimes the name can kind of set the tone for that. Is there
We can
any...
just change it to traffic safety and parking. Just reverse it.
You're going to...
Mark?
You're going to get an email from a third grader having his ideas.
Absolutely. The more youth we can get engaged, the better.
Contest.
Any other miscellaneous items?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Portsmouth.